Early on in my career as a reporter at KSL Television, I was sent to cover a major disaster that happened in Carbon County. There was a coal mine there, the Cottonwood Mine, and they'd had a fire in that mine, and it had killed 27 of the miners, which was a devastating story. It was just a couple of weeks before the Easter holiday. And so everybody was out there, CNN was there, the New York Times, everyone. This was a major disaster. And it was really hard, it was really difficult because that was devastating to that community to lose 27, I think it was 26 men and one woman who died in that mine fire. And so during that month of December and during the Christmas holidays, I was pretty much living out of a hotel room over there. And then I did a lot of follow-up stories as they were trying to determine the cause of the fire in the months afterwards. And so it was in January, I think, of 1985, that I was doing a lot of stories over there. And one day I was over there doing a story, and it turned out to be kind of a big story. And so they wanted to fly me back to Salt Lake City so that I could be live on the newscast. I guess it was that big of a story. So I went to the airport, the Huntington Airport, and there was a little private Cessna plane, one single-engine plane. It's about all they have there at those little airports. So he came to pick me up, and I grabbed all my tapes and stuff, and I jumped on the airplane, and we went and took off and headed out to fly to Salt Lake City, which is about a 45-minute flight as opposed to about a 3-hour drive. So we were flying along, and the pilot was a nice young guy. And so as we got flying over the mountains, suddenly this cloud cover came in. And so when we came into the Salt Lake Valley, it was completely, we call that an inversion here, and the clouds went from the ground, up hundreds of feet. And so we couldn't see anything. So we were flying up above the clouds, and so we were supposed to land at airport number 2 in Kearns. And so he called them, and they said, you can't land here because of the inversion, and also because the ice has frozen over on the runway, and the runway is solid ice. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to head for the Salt Lake Airport. So we started going further north to head to the Salt Lake Airport, and we got close to that airport, and they called us and said, you can't land here either because we've got icing problems, and there's no visibility, so you can't land here. And so we said, okay, and so we turned around and we started heading back to the Provo Airport, and same problem, was iced over in Spanish Fork. There were no airports that were not iced over that we could land at, and there was no visibility. And so we decided that we were going to have to fly back to Price, where we had come from, but we didn't have enough fuel because we'd used up all the fuel on the plane flying around. And so we found ourselves in a position where we're flying in a little Cessna plane up above the Rocky Mountains, and we don't have enough fuel to make it back to the airport we came from, and there's no airport that we can land at. So that's kind of a scary situation to be in. And so he was a young pilot, and he was scared, and his fear made me scared. And so we were both scared to death up flying, the two of us in this little airplane, trying to figure out what we're going to do. So we're just kind of flying around in circles because we don't know where to go. And so they're getting nervous on the ground because they've got this plane that's running out of gas and nowhere to go, and they don't know what to do either. So finally they say, okay, we're going to have you land at airport number 2 in Kearns, the ones we were headed for. So we started heading for that airport, and we were getting low on the fuel gauge. And so I was getting pretty scared. So this was a time in my life that I was just starting as a reporter, and my objective was to work for the networks. I wanted to be a big name in journalism. I had gone into journalism because of Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein, and that's what I wanted to do. And so as we were flying around, I started reassessing my life and my life's choices. We didn't have children at the time, and so I started thinking about what I wanted to really do with my life. And I started thinking that maybe I wasn't headed in the right direction. I wasn't really a bad person. I did drink and smoke and stuff, but I didn't think I was as devout in my beliefs and my dedication to being a disciple of Christ as I ought to be. And I thought, if I meet him right now, I don't know that I'm prepared, because it was going through my mind that I might not live through this ordeal. And I think the pilot was that way too, because he was very nervous. And so we dropped down into the clouds, and you couldn't see anything. It was just clouds everywhere. And there was all these lights going off, and they were beeping, and they were making all these sounds and everything. And so I was praying to God, as I'm sure the pilot was too, and I was saying, if you let me live through this, I will be a better person. And I will give more service to other people, and I'll be more dedicated as a disciple of Christ. And so, you know, I was contemplating my own death. And so we came and we dropped out of the cloud cover right on the airport, and there were blue lights lined up all along the airport. There were emergency vehicles on both sides of the freeway because they anticipated that on the, not the freeway, the landing strip, because they anticipated that we were going to crash because of the ice on the runway. And so when we dropped down, we were at the wrong end of the runway. And so you were supposed to come down this way, and we were towards the end of it already. And so he had to pull back up because we were, you know, we couldn't land. And so that even made it more scary because we had to do this thing all over again. And so the fuel gauge was nearly on empty, and the lights were flashing, and I was praying. And so this time we came down and we dropped out. We were at the end of the airport. So he came down and he landed, and it bounced once. And then we slid, we hit, and we just slid sideways all the way down the airport. And towards the end, we went off a little bit. So all these crews came over and everybody, and luckily we pulled it off. And so we jumped out of that plane, and that pilot and I, we hugged each other, and we both kissed the ground. and I think I emerged from that as a little bit of a different person, because I had a chance to really contemplate what would be that I was going to die, and that I didn't want to live my life in a way that was of no significance. And so I decided that moment on that I was going to be more devout in my own religious beliefs and in serving others, because it's through serving others that we serve Christ. And so a scary experience. Since that time, I've never wanted to fly in single-engine planes. I think they're horrible and scary. But I think I learned a good lesson that kind of shaped me for the next direction of my life.